Martial arts and life have a lot in common. Both take a tremendous amount of patience, determination, grit, a strong mindset. And to get either done correctly, you need the right people to listen to. This is Beyond the Mat, the podcast where real talk meets raw insights. Get ready to dive deep into the world of martial arts, coaching, business, and health as we bring you candid conversations with professionals, coaches, authors, and entrepreneurs who are making waves beyond the confines of the dojo. From the adrenaline-fueled arena of combat sports to the boardrooms of successful enterprises, Beyond the Mat is your go-to destination for real and raw discussions, plus invaluable lessons learned on and off the mat. So, if you're ready to unlock the secrets to success in every aspect of your life, let's do this. Live from the Great 1-8, this is Beyond the Mat, where warriors are made and legacies are forged. Here's Mark Cox.
Yeah, brother. I'm loving it, man. You know, it's funny.
Yeah, that one gets you a little bit pumped up.
It does. Where was the tactical warfare? The tactical warfare.
I have a kill house here in Chatsworth, so it's inside. I have a built on the outside where we can do that kind of tactical work. So I got a 2-bedroom kill house that we use for training at the studio here in Chatsworth.
Yeah,
that's from.
That's beautiful, man. I would love to come and do that. You know, I've got a friend of mine, Ron Lowinger. He was a sniper for the Marine Corps, and he created what was called the Doom Room. In the Doom Room, I think we might have talked about it last time I saw you. And the whole thing was they would fill it with smoke. Play Rob Zombie so loud that you could barely hear, keeping strobes. And the first thing, it was a life changer, man. He handed me a shock knife, and everybody in there, they were good fighters, but they were also good with blades. And he looked me straight in the face and he goes, Israel, he goes, I want one thing from you. He goes, I want you to get out of this room. That was it. Just get out of the room. Well, my brain kicked in, and there was a Sambo guy that came up to stab me. And when he came up to stab, I could barely see him. And I went directly into striking. And I realized at that moment, Ron came behind me, cut my throat right behind me, theoretically, of course. And he goes, what did I tell you, man? He said, I gave you one command. Your command was to survive, not to fight. He said, your mind, because it's been trained as a fighter, just got itself killed. And it was the first time I realized that instinct was this close to being the actual opposition to what we were looking for. And it was 1, because I didn't understand the command, 2, because the subconscious mind, man.
Well, it's true. And I think that's true in a lot of martial arts, to be honest with you. Even jiu-jitsu, I think that a lot of times when you have grips on somebody or you're pulling somebody in, our tendency is to go after things that were grabbing us, right? We think that because they grab us, we grab back, as opposed to that may not even be something that you need to do at all. You just subconsciously, you're like, oh, he grabbed my shirt, I got to grab him now. And there's ways to get out of moves that doesn't really, his grabbing you doesn't have. And that's why sometimes and we'll talk about this here in a second, but when you're rolling and you do it with your eyes closed, where you can't see and you can only feel, believe it or not, your jiu-jitsu gets way better. Isn't it a weird phenomenon when that happens? Yeah.
It's amazing how that changes, man, because, last time we spoke, we were talking about how, we were talking about what I would use the word hypnosis at that time all the time. Right. But it's kind of weird when we're in martial arts, we get into that subconscious zone state, and they say that closing the eyes, or not say, they measure that our brainwaves go from beta to alpha just by a blink or closing our eyes down, which immediately brings us that much closer to that Zen state or to that flow state. So yeah, man.
It is. Cool. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But so let me, I'll have you introduce yourself, but Israel's been looking forward to this for a long time. Israel Mandrake.
Yes,
I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself, what you do, and then we're going to get into some of this talk. All right. So you take it away and introduce everybody who's here, man. Jonathan Ellis says hi, by the way. He's on here.
Love you, Jonathan Ellis. How you doing, my brother? Speaking of, Jonathan Ellis and myself are talking about, I'm going to Atlanta soon sometime to see my brother out there, and I might be performing out there. So on that note, I'll introduce myself to anyone who's watching this hasn't seen. My whole life has been the study of technically clinical hypnotherapy. When I say shamanism, before I even get into those words, what I mean by that is the healing, the unconscious mind's capability to heal itself. But my whole life and martial arts were all the same as hypnosis to me. I learned hypnosis through kata, through martial arts, through meditation. And I fought when I was 21 years old. I started fighting professionally. And after that, I went to Las Vegas, and it's been a wild career. I started the Madman of Mind Magick show. And so it was called, and now it's called Mind Magick Live, which is on stage. I mix hypnosis, magic tricks and illusions, and mentalism. So to chop those up a little bit, the show to the audience is just imagine like David Blaine on steroids, but giving a shit about his people, if that makes sense. When I'm on stage, it's all theater, but when I get off the stage, I take the same techniques to help people with their lives, mainly teaching them that manifestation and hypnosis are the same thing. So same thing when I work with athletes. That program I told you about, it's called the Supernatural Athlete. And when I'm working with athletes, the exact same techniques that I'm using on stage, the same ones that I use with metaphysical people, same when I'm teaching a clinic for MDs or PhDs, I'm teaching them the exact same techniques I would if I was working with a basketball player who wants to be able to slam dunk, but is missing it by this much. So yes. my life is performance people, man.
Yes. So I get asked, and as soon as I had you out there, I had a lot of people start asking me, he goes, what's he do? I said, well, you know, he it's hard to say what he does because an entertainer as well as hypnosis. Yeah. And I think the hypnosis thing becomes really kind of weird right? Have you not seen that? So when you start saying hypnosis, people are like, oh, that's weird. And if you get into the Christian realm, like myself, then they're going to be thinking, well, that's kind of weird. So people asked me, and I said, well, let me tell you how I met him and what he did in front of me. I said, yeah, it's fun and entertaining to watch somebody bark like a dog, okay, on stage, right? And but after hours, we were sitting there, and I said we were in New Jersey, and it's when I launched my book. And after I did that, he told me to, we were just kind of talking, and there was a gentleman there, and he was really overweight kid. And you called him over, and I said, I watched him kind of transform this kid's mental attitude towards weight loss. And I talked to that kid the next day.
Yes, right? Sir.
I don't know if I even told you. I talked to him the next day. He was at the counter. I said, hey, tell me how that felt to you yesterday. And he goes, I still feel that it's the first time I feel I can conquer something here. I think we have motivation. I tell everybody that anyway, right? It's really easy to be motivated. It's very hard to be disciplined. Yes. Right. And now maybe that thought pattern that you gave him was enough of the motivation and the discipline to work together. But I saw him, and I tell everybody, I said, I saw him do it. I said, I watched it. And absolutely. I said, it wasn't a bunch of hocus pocus like you think.
Right.
So let's try and take the stigma out of that. Let's talk about that real quick.
And actually, if I can, Mark, what I'd love to do too, because you had mentioned Christianity, this is something I would love to talk about too, because I started the last year changing my language a lot when I'm speaking to people, because my goal is to help people into because I'm healing from all the past of the things I've done, been, seen, and I was raised in a Christian family. And I still go to, like, when I go to churches, I'll go to Unity Church, Unitarian Church, Methodist Church, all kinds of different ones when I'm with family or different parts of my family. And they'll ask me about hypnosis. And I always say the exact same thing, whether you're making love, dancing, fighting, or in prayer, all of those bring beta waves, goes beta to alpha. And the reason why, when we go in those trance states, that's where we go to a frequency where basically, just like our phones, we begin to interface with that which we call spiritual. Because we always say the magic of today is always the science of the future. There was a time you could take over a village if you had a lighter. If you could have the lighter, you knew the magic. Well, the magic is just things that people don't understand, because my Christian friends, when they're praying or when I'm working with them with hypnosis, and I'll take that word out. Instead of hypnosis, I'm going to use the word reconditioning the unconscious mind and nothing more. There's no magic connected to it. I mean, it seems magical to us because we're in a very young society where, people are learning right now about reprogramming the subconscious mind more than ever because of online. There's great teachers on there now speaking it in a language where people can understand it better. My goal in the last year is to say hypnosis less and say manifestation more, because answered prayers, hopes and wishes, dreams, even when you were a kid and you blew a candle out and made a wish, just hoping it would come true, all of that is connected to the same source. And that source, I genuinely believe in my heart, for my Christian friends and for all religions, cultures, ideologies, and belief systems, I believe that same source is there for everybody unconditionally. I think our prefrontal cortex separates us from other people, but our real heart, our heart, connects us to one source. And that source is a little bit bigger than we can comprehend yet in our very young adaptation to life. Psychology was something that was made up only 400 years ago,
I agree. Yes, I 100% agree with that. And I think I tell people also, when there has to be a state of something, because we talk about it in the martial arts. When you breathe, when you somebody's on top of you in jiu-jitsu and you feel claustrophobic, you're going to react to the claustrophobic like this and tense, and it becomes more and more like the world is coming around you. Or you take a deep breath and you say, I'm going to find a way out, or I'm going to tap to the pressure,
Absolutely.
and can I breathe through this? Can I weather the storm? That has to be something that subconsciously you are making happen, because for either way can happen. That this happens. You can either feel all that pressure on top of you and tap to pressure, just like in life, or you close your eyes and breathe, relax, and find a way out.
Absolutely. And it's so weird too, brother. They use in the Olympic trials way back, like with Mary Lou Retton and a whole bunch of teams. They used to use hypnosis all through the Olympics. Like me and you spoke about this before, I believe. Tiger Woods, that when he first came out and he was just killing it, except for when he would go to putt. When he would go to putt, he was absolutely terrible. He could dominate the field, but when he would go to do his last putt, that's where he would lose. So a hypnotist had actually taken his putter and pulled a different sheath at the top of it. So when his hands touched it, it was the anchor, just like when we're doing martial arts, when we're about to do a kata. And right when we're about to do the kata, we do the last thing right before that hits, and our mind switches. And that's exactly what his hypnotist helped him do. Was the moment he would grab his putter, he instantly in his mind would see the hole. And this is completely ludicrous, completely silly, and completely not real. But in his mind, he would see the hole open. He would see it come closer, and he would go, his mind knew he already sunk the ball. He already knew that. So by the time he would grab this, he had already won. And so when I'm working with athletes, every single time it's the same thing. They're already high performers. They're already elite professionals. So most of the time they're just little unconscious, kind of like when we flinch before we learn martial arts. If someone throws a punch, we flinch because it's hard driven. It's hardwired. But after martial arts, we've hypnotized ourselves to be calm and move. Or another word for hypnosis, we have reconditioned our unconscious mind to get out of the way calmly. Well,
I think true. One of my stories I tell people quite often and I'll let you elaborate on how you can talk yourself into something or out of something.
Absolutely.
But one of the stories I talk about quite often for me is I competed. There was it's called the USKL back in the day, United States Karate League. And I competed in this every month. And so for 12 months, you would compete every week and you would get points. And when you get points, you would get seeded. And the top seed at the end of for the finale of that series of the United States Karate League, you would get to be the last one to go. If you were top seed, you can be the last one to perform, which was really important when you have, more than 5 people in a division. Being the last one makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
So I remember this vividly. I was the top seed, and it was me and another guy that battled all year. Sometimes he won, sometimes I won, sometimes he won, but I won enough more to have the top seed. I'll never forget this. I usually before I would close my eyes, I would visualize every brick breaking. I visualize all that stuff before I even went in.
Absolutely.
But this particular time, I visualized everything, and I'm going up to my last bricks. And these are the bricks that I had 5 on each side, and I would do this double elbow break this way.
Uh-huh.
And I broke everything. And I said, okay, this is it. And I'm stepping up to the very last thing. And I went up like this, and I went like this. And in my head, I didn't say, man, when I smash this stuff, I'm going to be the world champion today. I said, man, if I miss this, all my work goes down the drain. So then guess what happened? I missed my left side, and I lost the world championship that year because of one break, because of one negative thing I put in my freaking head. So why don't you elaborate on that? Is that something that you see?
Oh my God, brother. It's really wild is I remember you mentioning that when I saw you in Jersey, when we were talking about that specific moment. And yeah, it's really wild, but there's something about, I always say the self-talk is the hypnotist that lives inside your head. And just one subtlety, because, the crazy thing in the world of hypnosis, they would call this anchoring. When you came up like this and you were about to come down to break, same thing as before kata, or say, for instance, the same thing as a wedding ring. It's an anchor. It means something so deeply that when the person places it on a finger, it changes reality. And the moment that you were here, the moment you were here, all of your brain at that very moment, because you've done it 1,000 times, you were in that state 1,000 times, your body was producing chemicals that you could unconsciously smell at that very moment. Only when you get right to here just to break those, and that one subconscious command can stop it all from happening. And it's crazy because that's something you can use in psychological warfare against your opponent. And it's often used in our advertising and marketing. If you ever watch the ads for the FDA-approved drug cartel, you can see when they're lying to us on TV, all of those messages that they're saying about the medications that they're giving us, it has all of those defeating subject matters, much like you said, if I miss it, and they will literally make you feel like you are about to miss your health the whole way through. They're selling that poison. So it's amazing. It can be used for positive or negative that quick. Psychological warfare or checkmate that quick with just one basic statement. I'll use it on stage a lot. When I say to somebody to have them forget their name on stage, it literally is so close to right there at the tip of their tongue. They can feel it. But I'll just say to them, do you remember a song you once forgot when you forgot your name? Did you forget your name, or do you forget it now? Or a phrase like, you can either forget to remember or remember to forget. So it's a looping pattern linguistically that makes the mind go, in just that moment, they know their name. They know their name. They've said it their whole life. But for that very moment, there's the illusion of completely forgetting a name. They haven't forgot it. It's just right out of the reach. Same as the elbow coming down. You've done it 1,000 times, and it was just a little bit out of reach. Crazy, man.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I tell people this story all the time. I said, you'll quit right before you win because your mind quits before your body. And I
Yes.
say it all the time. Most people quit as soon as as soon as you're about to win. I don't know why that is, but it just, or people
Do
will
you ever?
talk themselves out of even starting. You know what I mean?
Yes. Do you ever watch David Goggins or Tim Kennedy at all?
Yes. Yeah, both of them. I love Tim Kennedy. He's my kind of
Yeah,
people right there. And I like
man.
Goggins too, but yeah, Tim
Yeah.
Kennedy, he's
I love that, man, dude. His sheepdog response, his program for sheepdog is so good. And I think most of your listeners would know, but for anyone who doesn't, it's basically taking the civilian and giving them an operative's level of being able to whoop ass and take names to protect your family. It's beautiful. Really, really good. From disarms all the way to, carjackings, everything under the sun, how to deal with all of that. So, but he talks about that. The reason I bring him up is he would speak about that very much, about the defeat previous, like just that 1 second of doubt is the one thing that can make or break even the entry into combat,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man.
Yeah, well, he also he was talking the other day about violence.
Yes.
And how somebody that is able to do violence are usually the most peaceful people there are.
100%.
Right. And like he was talking about how his children he really don't know what he's seen or what he's done when it comes to combat.
Right.
But in the same token, he's got that soft spirit for them at home. They haven't seen that side, but that side can quickly come out. It only take a second for it to come out. And, if need be. So I just saw him talk about that the other day, Tim Kennedy. Yeah. I like him a lot.
And it's really wild. Him, like Goggins, both of them, their background is so stacked, man. I can't even imagine getting through Bud's training and then being in other special forces units simultaneously. Because Tim has been in a series, hasn't he? He's Green Beret. He's Green Beret, and is he SEAL too? SEAL and Beret?
No, I don't think he's SEAL. I think he might be Ranger. I think he's Ranger,
yeah.
Not SEAL. So it's. Yeah, he's definitely special operations for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But
he's fascinating.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He talks quite a bit about visualizations and stuff like that. But I think that's important. I think you're talking about working with athletes and stuff like that. Why don't you give some of the athletes that you have worked with? Let's talk about who you've worked with.
Okay, so presently, this is actually one of my favorites that is happening right now as we speak. I'm going to be performing at the Diamondback Music Hall in Detroit. So it's about 1,200 people, I think. It's my buddy. His name is Rob Griffin from the Detroit Pistons. And a little while ago, now before I go on, Rob Griffin from the Detroit Pistons played with the Bulls, the Detroit Pistons, and was a Harlem Globetrotter. And I met him originally on a set doing a reality TV show. But the reason I'm mentioning it, on October 6th, I believe, I'm going to be in Detroit playing. And I work with him. So I work with him, and I'm getting ready to work with his basketball teams. And you're going to love this, brother. You just said, what athlete? So I got offered to work with a soccer team just recently by a behavioral scientist by the name of Stuart. And he asked me, he said, well, how would you work exactly with the soccer team? And I said, what age are they? And he said, 16, 17. This is a youth team. This isn't a pro team. It's a youth team. And I said to him, am I allowed to say anything? And he goes, whatever works, man. And so I sat with the team and explained to them. I said, everyone close your eyes. And I want you to realize that soccer used to be played with human heads. And if you lost, your team was killed. If I use the word murder to make it severe. And those dudes open their eyes. I'm like, now that you know that, how do you think the opposing team's going to do? Now that you just know that. Now, that was just a suggestion. How would that change anything? Well, just that feeling. But because I said it with severity, the unconscious mind fills in the blanks. And they went, and that was it. Just the understanding that it used to be played like that. Bunch of young men getting ready to hit the field with a team that has no idea that they're thinking about that level of measure. So that's psychological warfare. Yeah. And it was just feeding the team an idea. But the idea, I mean, we did more than that, of course. We did a whole series of things. But other than that, I would say some of my favorite. I just went down to Florida with my friend. I don't know if you're watching now, brother, but my friend Frank Avila, defense attorney in Chicago, Illinois. I just went with him down south to Florida, and we were working with MMA fighters down there. And if you heard of a guy by the name of, I just saw him fight. I'm trying to remember what his name is. Big guy. He looks like Mark Hunt. Big dude. I got to look him up. He fought the heavyweight. He fought for the heavyweight championship that night. Has his mustache curled up real tight. I can't think of what his name is, but he's badass, Mark.
I know who you're talking about.
He looks like Mark Hunt almost. I asked him after the fight too. I said, if you could fight one fighter on this planet, who would it be? And he looked at me straight in the eyes and he goes, Mark Hunt? And I looked at him. I'm like, dude, you look like Mark Hunt. He was scary. It was so scary watching him fight. He was built like yourself, like literally his arms.
Threw a punch. Big stocky dude. Same as Mark Hunt. Big stocky guy. You know.
And he was
a little bit. We call that a little bit fit and a little bit fat. So there's
And dude, it was devastating. He was fighting a German that night, and the German obviously came in from Germany. This dude's a mountain, and as soon as he's walking at him, he scared me all the way. This dude, I'm trying to think of what his name is. It'll pop in my head in a minute. I'm watching him, and all of a sudden I see him looking, and he's kind of tilting his head. He's kind of moving a second, and the guy kicked him, but he hit him in the groin on the first shot. And what he did, he just goes like this, and you saw his smirk change, and he threw a gazelle punch, and you know gazelle. A Mike Tyson style bob and boom, and he threw it so hard and hit that guy. You could hear it going off like a shotgun, dude. As soon as the fight started, and I'm just like, shit, dude, it's going. So it was beautiful, but he didn't knock him out. It went all the rounds, but they both look like, it was devastating. He hit him like a Mack truck. It was beautiful.
The fighters now, I know that you did some martial arts and fighting back in the day. You told everybody.
Yes, sir.
Were you doing this? How did you come across doing what? Have you always done this, or did you fall into this in the fighting aspect of things? Where did you start landing this?
Okay, this is going to sound really wild, but when I was a little itty bitty boy, my grandfather used to run speakeasies in Alabama because it was dry out there. So he was basically bootlegging alcohol and doing illegal stuff with my two other uncles. So it was my granddad from World War II, Vernon Vaughn. This whole tattoo up about here is all Vernon, right? He's my hero. And when I was a kid, he taught me magic tricks. So when I was a little kid, he was showing me, he'd bring home little magic tricks where he put a quarter in the thing. And I'm sure you've seen it before, a little box where you change it and the quarter would disappear.
Yeah, right. Yep, I remember that.
His brother didn't have a thumb for some reason. And I was too young to know what playing dirty meant. So he was a poker player and didn't play very nice and was into all kinds of bad stuff, right? So I grew up around three bad boys that were my grandfather and his two brothers. That's where I learned magic tricks. They taught me bar tricks and all kinds of stuff, right? And then I started martial arts real young. At 11, I started Shorei Goju, which hard soft, Shorei Goju, yeah? And I ended up training from then all the way till around 18, 19. I started doing judo tournaments, jiu-jitsu tournaments, all that. 21 started my first fight, but I was doing magic tricks that whole time. No hypnosis. No, I didn't know what it was. But then kata and all the prearranged fighting technique, and my sensei, John Gussman, national level judo champion, wonderful teacher. He said to me, Israel, close your eyes. When you roll, when you do jiu-jitsu, I want your eyes closed. And he's like, and when you go home, when you're with your girlfriend, he said, I want your eyes closed. He said all these different things. He started showing me how to feel the push hands, how to feel the tactile sensitivity. Well, that started teaching me about what I call hypnosis now. But back then it was just called reconditioning the unconscious mind, of course. And so got all the way to about the age 27. And at 27, I left for Las Vegas with this dream that I was going to go and do magic tricks in Las Vegas. Soon as I got there, I met Dr. Scott Lewis. And Dr. Scott Lewis, he was at the Riviera for 7.5 years. And he started teaching me Ericksonian hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming. So neurolinguistic programming was Dr. Richard Bandler's baby. And that was basically how to help people with everything from, everything. It's neurolinguistic programming is modeling after excellence. So that's even how I work when I work with fighters. I'm doing NLP with hypnosis highlights, right? And NLP is basically hypnosis methods without putting them into deep states per se. But hypnosis itself, when I got to Las Vegas, I started doing all these tricks and everything like that. And I got my first gig in Las Vegas at Caesar's Magical Empire. And so next thing I know, I'm 27 years old, headlining on the Las Vegas Strip. When I say headlining, I was actually in the main room in Caesar's. So after that, I saw, and here comes the final frontier, I saw a guy named Darren Brown, and he was a European mentalist. And I had studied all that stuff, but I was more of a magician than a mentalist or a hypnotist. And I started doing this magic stuff, and I started doing stuff like making people forget which card they were thinking of, or they would go to see a card, I'd show it to them, and then all of a sudden they would see another card because I would use verbal tricks to make them see something else. Well, those verbal tricks led to, okay, how real can I do this for clients also? And so it finally balanced out in life now. Obviously, either I'm on stage doing shows or helping people with those techniques. So that's where it all started, though, man. That's actually the whole lineage. It was my grandfather when I was a kid, my beautiful parents who put me into martial arts at 11. And then in my early 20s, I went way off the end on the psychedelic movement back then because I was a young kid, man. So I was into mushrooms and everything. And I was just into expanding consciousness. Well, back then, I didn't know one thing from the other. I was just doing, right? And I was fighting from the ages of 21 to 27. So when you go on the West Coast, which you're on the West Coast, you know how a lot of guys, when they roll jujitsu, they microdose. So I didn't realize I was microdosing. I would go and now it's going to sound really funny, Mark, but I would go out and party the night before, but still be tripping out a little bit in the morning and have to be in the dojo early. So I would be rolling on a little bit of shrooms, and it was starting to make my mind get out of the way so I could feel more than think. And so that helped me become a better jiu-jitsu player. And I started realizing, wait, that's what the shamans always talked about. And all the ancient cultures, they talked about using through ethnobotany or the plant life that they could get into states to where they could be better at what they do. And it would break the programming of the unconscious mind. But I didn't know all that yet. I was learning it as I was just being a young kid, you know?
So let's talk about what you do with this is your main program is you're working with right now is the athletic, working with the athletes, yes, correct?
Yeah. So superhuman athlete. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Let's, who just popped on here? That's good. He's got good things to say about you.
Oh, it's now so good to see everybody.
Why I'm always find you so intriguing.
Yeah, much love, everybody. It's good to see you.
So let's talk about what you do when you come in. If you were going to come into let's say it's studio. Let's say you're going to come to my studio and you're going to talk to my and they don't really have to be athletes. They could be just practitioners of the art per se.
Absolutely.
And how to help with the mindset that you need. Let's talk about that. How that looks, what your program does, and what can it improve.
So the first thing that I would do is, and this goes for if I'm working if I walk into a dojo, if I were working with a sports team that was a hardcore competitive team, or an executive, because I always tell executives, business is a sport and sports are a business. You know what I mean? And so in the world of business, you're still an athlete, right? So I'll work with guys in business, but when I do that, I always bring it into an athletic frame. So we're looking if they're a competitive businessman or woman, right? But when I come into a place like a dojo, the first thing is everyone there is already a peak performer of some sorts. If they've taken their heart, mind, and body and they show up every day, they already understand what I'm calling hypnosis. So the first thing I always do is break those metaphors. So if I was sitting in front of a team, if I came into the dojo, the first thing is showing everybody all the cool connections that are already part of their everyday life. So we demystify what we're about to do completely. Number two, find out what the flaws are, or so-called flaws, because a lot of them, much like Tiger Woods, he had no flaw when it came to being able to put a ball into a hole. It was something that was in front of his mind when it came to the idea or metaphor of what putting meant. So when it comes to a martial artist, say for instance, we learn every single thing about what it is that they're after. If it's a full class or a full team, if they're competitors, we prepare for that. And the first thing we do is the music that they use. If they're a competitor, let's say they use music to go into the ring, I begin teaching them how to reprogram themselves in the morning, at noon, and at night. And I call it the 333 method. I use this chart. Beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day, and we create a symbol. Now that symbol, if it's the dojo, they might be wearing their patch. But every night every day when they wake up, they're reprogramming themselves in the morning with the image of that patch. Then midday, while they're eating their midday meal, they're reprogramming themselves, even using their phone to hear music or other audios to keep running that through their system. And then as they're falling asleep at night, which is the most vital of all, they're going to marinate in this stuff all night. For 8 hours, their unconscious mind is going to marinate in whatever we are reprogramming. Now, I'm going to use an example for an athlete that, say, for instance, is going into real combat, someone who's an MMA fighter and they're going to really get down. I may have them use the metaphor of Art of War by Sun Tzu. And when their music starts, they're not a fighter anymore. They're a general, and they're ready to go to war. And the only thing their brain does is remember all of the precepts of the Art of War by Sun Tzu that we have personally chosen out of that book to program into their mind, body, and spirit. So that way, when the music starts, they're remembering to look small where they are large, to look all the different precepts, that the battle has already been won for a warrior going there, not to look for a battle because they've already won the war. So all of those 6,000-year-old precepts are driven into the unconscious mind. Now, when it comes to athletic movement, we find, say, for instance, they go for omoplata. But every time they go for an omoplata, which is, for anyone who's watching, that's basically an arm bar that looks like this, where you're breaking out a shoulder. If they go for that, but they keep missing it, we will take the actual physical move itself and take that move and we freeze frame it in black and white inside their mind so they can control it, re-stimulate it. And every time that their hand goes here to take that move, the freeze frame in their mind gets the exact position. And we go over that over and over. So when they're in movement, it's part of their daily conditioning that when I grab this part of the arm, there's only one picture, and that is the outcome of the omoplata done proper. So same thing with the slam dunk, same thing with putting. Like, think about how ludicrous it is. A lot of people don't know this, but Michael Jordan was someone who worked with a hypnotist. And they did the exact same thing they did with Tiger Woods, which was open the basket. Basket's not opening. But in here, what could possibly stop a guy who could slam like he could slam to have anything in his way at all? And, you know, the funny thing is the same thing that made him great. And that is the unconditional, the unconscious mind. Because we have hardwired programs, and then we have hardwired programs, learned programs, and then conditioned behaviors. So when I walk in, especially with athletes, we get to the nitty gritty of every single nuance. And then the fun part, level 2, we start coming up with ideas that reframe supernatural behaviors. Supernatural in our world is very, very easy because all the distractions. An excellent athlete, supernatural, would be basically where that person is living in the submergence of that. They wake up morning, noon, and night before that conditioning, and they are always in a state of reprogramming every single nuance until they do that as well as they eat. So,
Yeah. True.
yeah,
That's true.
absolutely.
Yes, this is true. Our mind can be our best ally or worst enemy. That's 100% true.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about, have you worked with young children at all?
Absolutely. This is one of the proudest moments I ever had. You remember Bob Proctor, the guy from The Secret?
I remember him. Yeah.
I worked in his office, not with him, but I worked in the offices he used to work with in Glenview, Illinois. And I was giving a speech one time at a Chamber of Commerce, and I had made a subtle comment about the FDA approved drug cartel that's killing our children. And I kind of said it jocularly, but I said it, and a bunch of parents stopped and froze. And they said, "Can you use hypnosis on children?" And I said, before the age of 7, they're already in the state we call hypnosis. So beta waves stay at theta waves. When you're under the age of 7, you're in imagination. You're in the imaginative part of the brain all the time. So when you ask the question, here it comes. I took the parents and I said, we're not going to work with the children. I want to work with the parents. And I taught the parents how to tell bedtime stories that were loaded. Then throughout the day, certain things to re-anchor that. So everything that they wanted to do. So the children that had anxiety, I taught the parents how to tell bedtime stories to make a new fairy tale that would take away the anxiety, which of course there were little physical exercises that went with it. But I taught them how to speak to their unconscious mind before bed, because they would go all the way through that night. So when I'm working with children in general, it's so great, depending on what age. Are you talking about early teens, or would it be under the age of 10?
Well, I don't know. I think that anything, like if you're saying that, you know how young kids are.
Yeah.
I think that, and today, now listen, I've been teaching martial arts for coming up on 40 years now.
Yes, sir.
And I've watched the different generations of parenting.
Yes.
Come around.
Yes.
And this particular parenting is very beta. Okay. So,
yes.
And, talking or even feeling is like they can't deal. Oh, you failed my kid.
Right.
And I said, their biggest growth is going to come from their failures. Their wins your wins will continue your path. Your failures will enhance your journey. I tell this all the time. I said, this just is the way it is. I said, I have won hundreds and hundreds of tournaments. Okay.
Yes.
I had a basement full of trophies. I kept 5 of them, 5 plates, some that were very important to me. I said, all my growth came from life lessons, came from my losses.
Absolutely,
not from my
man.
wins. And that's what I'm trying to, and I'm still kind of an old school guy, and I can get away with it. I'm older. So, talking, most of the parents now, I'm older than them. Right. And I have grown kids. So they listen to me a little bit different, but I'd like to be able to have some strategies for young, like my son, who's 30, no kids yet. Or we have, another one that's 25 and she's really good. She's one of my star players here. A warrior. She's the one that was just hit by a drunk driver a year ago that you probably saw on thing. We almost lost her to a drunk driving, piece of shit. But she's now back on the mat. I want you to imagine that in less than 8-9 months. And she's got this warrior type spirit.
Yes.
So I want to make sure that how can we help them help program their, in their young mind, how to talk to parents, how to talk to the children, because there is a difference on how to empower. What I say, or when I step on the mat, it's already a different ball game And they ask me all the time, they go, Dad, when you step on the mat, it's just a whole different energy. And I said, well, first of all, I'm the main guy. Okay. It is what it is. You know what I mean? I'm the main dude. I already have that persona about me and that energy about me already. Doesn't mean you can't command the same respect, but you have to learn your language on how to empower yourself for them to listen to you. I said, a lot of times with me, it can be absolute respect or absolute fear. That's it. There, I said, is that both of them work in my world. And I said, the fear thing, and I tell my son all the time, I said, I'm really kind of rough around the edges. I'm a rough around the edges type of guy. And my oldest son is not. He's more unless he kind of gets upset, but he's more the mellow opposite of me, kind of a smiley kid but trying to get that. So I'd like to know how we help them talk to parents, or how we help them become better teachers in themselves, in their mind. Because a lot of things with teaching or speaking or whatever it is, there's already a natural fear that you're going to fail. And, I've done so many tournaments that's kind of out of my wheelhouse at this point. I don't fear to get on stage. I don't fear things like that, but I don't like losing. I could tell you that. I mean, matter of fact, I hate losing more than I like winning. I can tell you that for a fact. So I like to know some of those answers.
Well, this is really cool, dude, because the first thing that comes to my mind is 100% agreement, first and foremost, and it has to be covert, which is so cool, because what's the one thing that's missing from kids at all anymore is rite of passage. In every village of every tradition, and every single tradition since the dawn of mankind, there's been rite of passage for the youth, where they became a man or they became a woman. And it's really wild, because now we're in a world where they're very confused at what even those words mean, right? I'll just leave it at that. But you know what I'm talking about, right?
I know. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, if we're working with the youth, we've already got that taken care of, because your students are already in the right environment to cause new metaphors. And high emotional states plus new metaphors equal rite of passage. I'm going to use a really extreme example real quick. And then, Mark, I'm going to use the example real quick, and then I'm going to jump back. In the Aboriginal culture, they would take their children and they would bring all the children around the bonfire. And as the children would sit there and look at the bonfire, all of the grandmas and grandpas would be right around here, and they would tell them the secrets of the monsters that live out in the village. And they would tell them about the monsters that live in the village and their crazy looking faces and how horrifying they were. And they would get the kids so scared that the little kids were shivering and they were scared to death of the dark. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, all these monsters would come running and screaming, and where the kids were out of their mind and they were screaming and they're ah. And then all of a sudden they'd pull the masks off, and it was their moms, their dads, their uncles, their aunts, their whole family. And then they would teach them the secrets of their village. So they would stay in, just like boot camp. So boot camp is shock, isolation, indoctrination, punishment, and reward. Cult indoctrination, shock, isolation, indoctrination, punishment, reward. Ironically, that story was exactly the same thing. They were shocked, isolated in an idea, indoctrinated with something that was positive, which was, welcome to the village. You have just become adults, and now you are now warriors that know the secrets. So for us to do that with youth these days, it would be so beautiful, because one, they're inside of a dojo where we can get them into great states of why they're doing martial arts. So even if they're playing, when I was in the dojo, we used to have very little kids, very, very little kids in the morning, and they would teach them just one thing, balance. They teach them rolling. So they would roll, but they would never do any chokes, no arm bars, none of that. They would see it, but then the sensei would talk to them about why they're doing that. Now, if we put them into high emotional states, which means if we were to take the kids inside the dojo and play games, but when they're at the absolute peak of the game and there's an emotional context and here it is, and if they can get it, they can get it, then we give them the meaning to it. And then they don't get a surprise because they only half-assed it. they're given something because they just became, well, a warrior for real, because they just learned something. And so me and you could put together a program where, man, this is going to be extreme what I'm going to tell you here, but I was doing a TV show for, do you remember the show Dirty Jobs?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, with Mike Rowe, for sure.
Yeah, that company was called High Noon Entertainment, and they were going to do a show with me called Rite of Passage. We had a German family, and the young boy was 14 years old, and we were trying to come up what's a good rite of passage. So I took him on earth, air, water, fire, and spirit. For earth, he had to do combat. In combat, we just drew a circle, and he did this combat thing where he learned how to fight. He just learned basically to do sumo wrestling style, right? Like get him out of the circle. Fire, we took him into a shooting range, and we had a military man teach him how to focus and hit the target. Water, his dad did water magic, so he did this metaphorical thing. And then when we got to the last part, I do glass walking. You've seen me do glass walking before on stage,
yeah.
where I work on broken glass. We ordered up, I don't know, his mother, I don't know how many pounds we did, but we got candy glass. So it was all fake. So we brought him out to this candy glass, and I took the blindfold off, and his mom and dad were across the glass, and I pulled it off. But first I was speaking in his ear while he was blindfolded. Do you trust me? Yes, I do. Do you understand everything that you just learned, and that this is the end of something of the old and where you are now and who the hell you are, my brother? And he said, yes. I said, when I take this blindfold off, you're going to see some very important people waiting for you. And when you do, I want you to trust yourself, not me, not those people, your own heart. And I want you to walk forward. And I promise you, if you do it while you focus, you will not get hurt. I take that blindfold off, and he sees broken glass. It's not real. None of it was real. It's just like when the SEALs, they'll do certain things where they take you to the peak and you think you're going to die, but all of a sudden it's an illusion. You're not going to die. And same thing, when he took that blindfold off, he just froze and went, and I said, do you trust yourself? And dude, I'm not kidding. 13 going on 14, I think. He lifted his body up and he walked right across what he thought was razor sharp glass. And when he got to the end, me and his dad picked it up and we hit it. And he's not watching this, but he will never know. He's in Germany. He'll never know. Dude, he thought he walked on broken glass. Now that's shock, isolation, indoctrination, punishment, and reward for a positive thing. We brought him into shock. He was isolated on holy shit. He went to go across the glass. And when he got to the other end, his father and his mother hugged him, and we welcomed him into manhood. And that was,
I think that's so true, that there's not a rite of passage. You know,
yes, sir.
in right. And so in my school right now, the kids of today. Now here's a weird thing though. The youngest ones are coming, that are starting to come around. Something is changing. Matter of fact,
yes.
I even think they're called Generation Alpha.
Yeah.
I think that's the new generation, right? We have generation, you got the baby boomers, the Gen X, and then there's millennials, then Z, right? Gen Z, which, right. And now we got the little 3-year-olds are way tougher than what the 10 to 12 are. Okay.
Yes.
Something has changed. Something is changing for sure. Because when I first opened up my school, parents were like, drop off, and, my kid gets cracked. I don't, it is what it is. And hey, matter of fact, I still get calls now. Sometimes, parents are like, hey, my kid's out of control. Can you boot camp them when they come in?
Yes, sir.
And so during that boot camp, how to even make that more effective would be great stuff that you could probably bring to the table.
Love that.
But I'm telling you right now that we lack in this world, because my boys, they don't even know how to wrestle, bro. They don't even know how to do it. Like I have to teach them how to headlock. Stuff we did with our brothers or our friends on the playground, dodge ball, cracking each other, all that stuff. Sir. I'm like, I have to teach you guys, you boys. I said in my head, I said, these young guys need to learn how to be a man a little bit here, man, because in their society, in our society, I'm a dad. Dads are looked at as a joke anyway. Okay. You look at Father's Day, it's already the 16th celebrated holiday. Okay. You got days like Arbor Day and stuff that comes before Fathers. So they're always kind of looked at as stupid. They're always kind of looked at as dumb on sitcoms. And right now everything is, you go girl, you know what I mean? And you can see this in my school that sometimes the girls dominate. Well, they're being taught to dominate. You can do whatever you want. You are what you are. It doesn't matter. All that kind of stuff. And, then, the men, or what they want to call toxic or whatever, masculine, whatever it is, it's completely lost. It's very frustrating.
You know what, man? My son just turned 19, and I don't know. Have you ever done this exercise before? I'll never forget this. When you said that, first thing that popped into my mind, I remember he went to Krav Maga which I know you practice also, of course. And when he had got out to his school, this was in Las Vegas, I asked him how class went, and man, this was one of my favorite ever, man. I said, "What did you learn today? Can you show me?" And he goes, "No, they did a drill with me." And I said, "What did they do?" And he said, "So they brought," and it was a class of about 30, 40 people in this class in Vegas. And they had all took the big shields, like the century kick shields, and they got around them and they squoze them in. And it didn't matter the technique. They said, "Effing fight, go out," and nothing else. Now that's the drill. You know what I mean? Because, well, it's one of those things where what I talked about, I said, "So what did you learn?" He said, "I learned not to stop fighting no matter what." And I said, "What else did you learn?" "That when it's uncomfortable to fight harder." And I said, "What else did you learn?" And he just kept going. And I kept asking him, and no one ever told him what he was supposed to learn. That drill kicks so much ass, dude. Like those kind of drills. But when they're losing their mind and they can't get out, I think that's where we can help them, because that's when we can program them with positive masculinity, positive duality, positive acceptance for the way society is and the ways they can deal with it as they do man up, and to use the word unpussify, you know what I mean? To unpussify and to be able to truly man up and to fight and to appreciate everybody else in the process. You know what I mean? Because it's their confidence that's being broken, and that confidence, I think that's something that we could really, really put something, a program. And the cool thing is I'm not doing that TV show now. We could even call that program Rite of Passage, martial arts Rite of Passage, or something along the lines for teens, young students and teens, but to where we teach them drills like that. The ankle drill, where they have a flag on their ankle, and yes, they're playing a game, but for them to play that game, that flag says something on it. So they're not just taking a flag, they're taking an idea that once they take it, we begin to ingrain them with that. So we can set that up. So through 1 day seminar, by the end of the day, they've been conditioned 3 times, and we send them all home with something that goes on their phone or something that goes on their parents' phone to help them out, to maintain that,
Yeah, I think that's strong. I think I was looking forward to having a talk with you, because I think growing their conscious is something that, it's like anything else, right? It's fight or flight. We go into those modes.
Absolutely.
And if we don't know how to take care of ourselves, we're constantly in a flight mode. We're not in a fight. We don't stand tall, eyes forward, chest up, looking forward. Yeah. We look eyes down. We have no confidence in ourselves. Our voice goes lower, and we're our hands kind of clasp together, and we're kind of victims. And I'm a little bit shy, and I don't have confidence. And you are right, because I do all those drills in class, and I hadn't thought about really kind of programming it to where it's a rite of type of passage where, and the thing is, parents got to let it happen. They have to let the process go. You would be surprised on parenting in my school how when I do black belt testing, if there's a failure, I set up for failure in my black belt test. Their first pretest is very hard. It's very mental. They have to get up in front of me by themselves, just like old school. You don't see that very often. Old school, you got to do your forms, and you make one mistake, you fail. Hey, you did the wrong block. You didn't do it right.
Yeah.
And that kind of pressure, I tell the parents all the time, this is not a test to bring grandma and grandpa to. I'm very matter of fact. I'm not really like, oh, you go and you can do it. So that's not what I do in the first pretest. And if they fail, they fail. And they have to go home with that failure. Now, that doesn't mean that in 2 weeks, a week or two, we'll do it we'll do the test again privately when there's not the pressure.
Absolutely.
And then I'll teach the lesson. I said, hey, you did well today. You got to do that well when there's pressure. That's the goal.
Absolutely. And in the way you got it set up too, just like you just said, man, by bringing them back in, that's the whole thing. Like the military operatives that I was talking about earlier, they said that one night they were woke up at 4:30 in the morning, or not 4:30, it had to be before that even. They were brought out to a rope bridge where the rope bridge was hundreds of feet down, where they could see the rope bridge all the way across. But as they're looking down, if they fell, they would be dead. Certainly they would splatter into 100 pieces. Right. So the next night they were woke up again and brought out there in pitch black and told, do it. Now, every one of those soldiers were scared to death, horrified, because they're strong. They got it. They can do a monkey bridge, which is the 2 ropes and then the one in the center, that V bridge. What they didn't know is that when they got to the other side, daylight was coming up and it was a different location and it was only 3 feet high. So it was all in here. That's why when the parents are doing shit, when parents are behaving like that, it's like those things are necessary, man. It's like more or less the parents need to be reconditioned. You know how that is. You know what I mean? It's a very subtle conversation, but yeah, that's set up for failure.
Yeah, it's true, and I'll tell you this. And my that I'm talking about, they'll even tell you the same thing. What I call the Black Hawk moms, the helicopter moms. Black Hawk is coming down, and they're in protective mode, which that's what their state is, right? But when they started, I've got a lot of moms taking class now. Now, once they've been in class for a while, they're like, okay, I get what's going on here. And matter of fact, this isn't as easy as it looks from the benches.
Absolutely.
And I said, now you can see you see the stress your kids are going through, but do you see how important, if they make it, what it's going to do? It's going to be something that you can't get on organized sports. You're not going to get that on the little league field.
Absolutely.
You know what you're going to? I tell all the parents, I say, you know what you're going to little league field? Your kids feel good about getting a trophy and playing one play. The elite athletes will play. The other ones will get dribbled in, and it is what it is. You know what I mean? And I said the same thing with basketball. Any of it, the top players will play because the win is still important. And this whole thing, like if they get too many points, we can't. No, man, you should smoke the other team. Smoke them. You know what I mean? I don't get it. You should. I don't care if they win by 100 points. That team should leave going, hey, we got to do more work.
Absolutely.
We got to do more work, or you know what I'm saying?
Well,
so I think that is just something that is, I don't know, man. I think that's one thing I did in the jiu-jitsu realm when I started really doing jiu-jitsu, even our tournaments here. You get you get to get on the podium. If you did first, second, or third, you get a gold or whatever. Helicopter moms, Bernadette, you know what I'm talking about.
Which, by the way, brother, you know what? When me and you met at a speaking engagement, and not them, not our brothers and sisters from that group. I'm talking about a totally different executives I've worked with. That's happening in the the corporate world. It's happening in. Did I tell you I work with the Frank Avila, that lawyer I was mentioning before? I help him with jury selection. I help him with mediation, all kinds of stuff from the mentalist side of things. So I help him with those things. Man, I see it in the courtroom. I mean, adults with adults. Same thing with when you see it with people in corporate. You go and you look, you meet the CEO, and he's scared. He's scared. He's afraid to be a leader, afraid to look at other adults and speak his heart and mind because of the conditioning. And I really genuinely, we all remember life before COVID. When COVID hit, shock, isolation, indoctrination,
right.
punishment.
100%.
Yeah. And
almost sound like Ivy League schools.
Jordan Peterson came out and basically said, even the college con is up. You know what I mean? Like when Jordan Peterson came out and he said, look what's happening to us. And I really believe, man, what you're saying is the most important thing on the planet. And, I use the word, I said unpussified, but what I meant by that truly, man, it's like nothing can come from training people honestly other than their victory. And anything but their victory, what the hell are they training for? And not just in martial arts, but as corporate people, as anything. And I don't mean victory to win over another, but to take pride in what they're doing here on their we were talking about Christianity earlier, from their God-given purpose. Like, it's like people are afraid, no matter what religion, but people are afraid to show their true purpose and the courage that it takes to live that out without having the judgment. And, Chase Hughes, the military operative, taught me this. He said, the reason why that is, the part of your brain that would have been cast out of the village, if you didn't follow the leader, your baby was thrown over a cliff and you were killed or banished from the village. That old part of the brain is still worried about what other people think and say. But for anybody who can if we could help, you're asking about the kids, just get them over that little hump of going, no, I take pride in what my purpose is, and it's spiritually driven, and I'm proud of it, and I'm okay with that. And if you don't like it, I'll hug you twice.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's definitely needed. Exactly what you're talking about. I see it on such a daily basis, and it's if you can get people strong minds, then you get strong wills. Exactly what the government doesn't want. The government wants you fat, not fit, right? They want you eating shit food. They want you to be able to use DoorDash and have people come drop shit off to you and keep you isolated, hating each other. Yes. And I tell everybody, I said, the beauty of the mat does not care how you feel. It gives 0 F's about how you feel. It doesn't care what color you are. It doesn't care what gender you are. It doesn't care what religion you are. All it is just, and it will reveal. Everybody asks me all the time, does the mat, it builds character? I said, no, it doesn't build it. It reveals it.
Yeah, that's why your book is so badass, dude, because the words beyond the mat, I cannot ever tell anybody, it as much, me and know it because we lived in it. But when you live on a mat and you're always fighting, you don't get into fights when you leave. It's very hard to get into one because there's something emanating off you to where other animals know, not you're going to beat on them or anything like that, but just because you'd rather hug them or you'd rather guide them. But then if an enemy does come along, they can sense it, man. They know how far to keep away because it's coming. And you ever notice too, every fight that ever happens on the mat, in other words, for anyone who's watching this who hasn't been in a martial arts dojo, especially jiu-jitsu, it's beautiful because arguments don't last long because two grown animals play and then one of them taps out and then there's always a hug and an I love you, brother, or brother and sister, male and female. There's never a go F yourself afterwards because combat takes care of that without true destruction. It's the reenactment and feeling of what's possible, Yeah, exactly. Building of character. It doesn't build character. It reveals. Absolutely.
And it does. And it shows your weaknesses and it shows mine. And it was a learning process, even for me. And I'm 63 and there's still, I'm still thinking, wow, what am I going to do? With this anger or a lower belt tap you, right? And you're like, I'm like, this is bullshit. And then I get then you get angry, and then you can't think, and then the pressure, and then it happens again. Then you leave the mat going, I suck. Okay.
Right.
As opposed to the building of the character happens when the lesson happens, when you're revealed, your weakness is revealed by somebody else, then your character builds. And then it goes, man, I got to stop being angry every time that happens. I better start reframing my mind and saying, hey, man, thank you for showing me my weakness, because I'm going to work on that this week.
Absolutely.
And that's how a character is built. But everybody asks me that all the time. I tell them all the time, I should make a shirt that says the mat does not build character, it reveals it. Just what it is.
That's beautiful.
But doesn't all adversity show you your character? Not just the mat?
What? Absolutely. Well, we're talking about
the basketball floor, the wrestling mat, the football field. It reveals your character right then and there.
It truly does, brother. And I think that that's one of the reasons that, everything that we've been speaking about today, man, we have an underlying conversation we're having about society's present situation simultaneously. And it truly is, man, whatever's going on in society right now, it's going to be those who persevere, those who will train to do so. Everyone else is going to drown because it's a conditioning that's speeding up. And, that's one of the reasons that when we started talking today, that I said I use the word hypnosis less, because I'm realizing scary little words that's not even an important word when it comes to being able to translate it. When we're teaching martial arts, or we're teaching, again, like the Aborigines that are teaching the secrets, by a shock level boot camp, by a bonfire, whatever the hell it takes, man, anybody who's really not going to be pulled down. I watch people consistently use their phone as a reverse vision board. They put negative stuff on it all day and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And it's like, it's reprogramming the unconscious mind to not enjoy the beauty of what we've been given here. And no matter what religion or culture, it's like, man, we've been given this beautiful 3-dimensional place where we can make miracles and create and design it and all this. And we're wasting time on BS or belief systems that do not empower us.
That's correct. All right. Well, listen, man, we're already 12 minutes over, and I've got another appointment coming on. So I could sit with you for another hour. And, in the comments, you guys, you let me know if you want me to have Israel on a more consistent basis where we can kind of collaborate, maybe not even an hour at a time, even 20 minutes. Hey, let's talk about this mindset. Let's talk about this. Sure. I'm always up for that if his time will allow. So I wanted to say thank you, Israel. Make sure, see this one? They're like, oh my God, yes. Look at that. See that? And we might have a little show just between us that we can do either, once a month or something, that we get back on and we just talk.
It would be
what that looks like.
It would be an honor and a pleasure, my brother. And for everyone who's watching too, I love everybody, and it's great to see all of you. And I'm glad you showed up today, and love you too, man. It's great to see you, my brother.
Yeah. A lot of positive stuff for us to get out there. So you bring a lot of stuff to the table, and you bring a lot of the mysticism of it out, and the reality of that we do live in this kind of a state on an ongoing basis. So, and I will have this also. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and that's, what I was saying about the magic show. The reason I do that magic show is to demystify a lot of things that are misconceptions, because, man, life is too short to be wasting time on what is and what isn't, because there's so much good shit here to just truly embellish, enjoy, and love before we, not to waste any time on the magic,
Sounds good. So, Israel, this will be out on also audio. I'll have it out by probably by tomorrow, and we'll have the audio portion of this, and I'll get some clips from us, and I'll send it off to you so you can kind of have more people listen to the show. I think the show is very impactful today. Let's see if we can't hit 1,000 views on this thing, you guys. So everybody that's on here, please share what you did. Once you get the audio, please share it out there. Go to Beyond the Mat on Apple or Spotify. You can find my thing. MarkCox.com is my website for all the audio portions of it. You can find Beyond the Mat also on YouTube, where you can watch it. Some people like to, I like the audio portions of stuff, even though we're live. I like to be able to hear things and then rehear it again, so we can get what we missed. But I want to thank you again, Israel. I look forward to the next time that we are together. I'll have your contact information on everything by end of day. Sound good?
Hell yeah, man. Thank you so much, brother. It's great to see you, brother.
All right, man. We'll see you.
You've been listening to Beyond the Mat. Our passion is martial arts, and that branches off to coaching, business, and health. So we think it's important to sit down with professionals, coaches, authors, entrepreneurs, anyone who's making waves beyond the confines of the dojo. Thanks for coming over. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at markcox.com and hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Beyond the Mat Podcast. Find the show on Spotify and Apple. Beyond the Mat. Till next time, keep it real.